"You're not invited to the birthday," our granddaughter said, her little face scrunched up with determination. My wife Martha and I looked at each other, stunned, silent. 7-year-old Emma stood in our kitchen, hands on her hips, delivering the news, like she was firing us from a job. Behind her, our daughter Cynthia avoided eye contact, examining our fridge magnets, suddenly fascinating. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I'm Howard Jennings, 72 years old, retired high school history teacher from a small town in Michigan. Most days follow the same comfortable pattern. Coffee at 6:30, newspaper at 7, yes, I still get the actual paper, a walk around the neighborhood if my knees cooperate, then puttering around the house or garden. Martha and I have been married 48 years. We live in the same 2-story colonial where we raised our only daughter. Cynthia Martha calls our routine predictably perfect. I call it earned. After 35 years of wrangling teenagers through American history, I appreciate quiet mornings and uneventful afternoons. I've earned my slippers and crossword puzzles, thank you very much. Our life wasn't always this calm. There were years of tight budgets, second jobs, and postponed dreams. I remember grading papers at Cynthia's swim meets, working summer school to afford braces, and the night we sat at this very kitchen table, calculating if we could manage college tuition without selling the house. Martha picked up seamstress work. I drove a delivery truck on weekends. We made it work. The greatest generation had World War II, I once told a colleague. We had tuition bills. We both laughed, but there was truth there. Sacrifice was our battlefield. I think about those sacrifices often. Like the fishing boat I never bought, always telling myself next year until my back got too stiff for casting. Or the European trip Martha and I planned for our 25th anniversary that became a weekend in Chicago instead. Because Cynthia needed help with the down payment on her first condo. Don't misunderstand. We chose these sacrifices gladly. When Cynthia graduated college debt-free, Martha and I held hands in the audience, silently congratulating ourselves. When she landed her first corporate job, we drove home from the celebration dinner, smiling like we'd won the lottery. Her success was our success. Cynthia married Peter 11 years ago. He's in banking or investing or something with numbers, the kind of job that requires expensive suits and weekend emails. They live in a neighborhood where the houses have names instead of numbers. Emma came along 7 years ago, followed by little Thomas 4 years later. We were good grandparents, the kind who babysit on short notice and never complain about sticky fingerprints on the furniture. We attended every t-ball game and dance recital, took photos like they were going out of style. Martha kept a drawer full of craft supplies. I maintained a respectable collection of toy dinosaurs. When Cynthia and Peter needed weekend getaways, we became the default destination for the grandkids. I built a treehouse in the backyard maple tree when Emma was 5. Nothing fancy, just a platform with railings and a rope ladder, but Emma called it her castle in the sky. Martha sewed curtains for the windows while I installed a small solar-powered light. Emma would sit up there for hours, reading books or having tea parties with her stuffed animals. Thomas preferred my workshop in the garage. By age 3, he could identify most of my tools, though I only let him handle the plastic ones I bought specially for him. He'd wear the little work apron Martha made him, safety glasses perched on his tiny nose, helping me build birdhouses or repair furniture. These are the memories I collected like treasures, storing them up for quiet evenings when my knees ached too much for gardening and the house felt a little too big for just 2 people. The first sign of trouble came 6 months ago, when Cynthia and Peter bought their new house. It wasn't just any house. It was practically an estate with a circular driveway and one of those refrigerators that connect to the internet. Why anyone needs Twitter notifications from their produce drawer is beyond me. "Dad, we'd love to have you and Mom over for dinner next Saturday," Cynthia said over the phone. The renovations on the East Wing are finally finished. East Wing. Like they were living in Downton Abbey. "We'll bring dessert," I offered. "No need," she replied quickly. "Our chef is preparing something special." Their chef. When did my macaroni and cheese-loving daughter start employing kitchen staff? The dinner was uncomfortable from start to finish. Peter spent most of the evening showing me around, pointing out features I couldn't care less about: smart home technology, imported marble, custom cabinetry. The grandkids barely acknowledged us, too entranced by their new game room with its massive television and virtual reality setup. "We've enrolled Emma in Meadowbrook Academy," Cynthia announced over coffee and some dessert I couldn't pronounce. "It's the top preparatory school in the region." "What about Lincoln Elementary?" Martha asked. "I thought she loved her teachers there." "Lincoln is fine for most families," Peter interjected, "but Meadowbrook will give Emma connections that will benefit her for life." Connections. For a 7-year-old. "And Thomas starts preschool at Meadowbrook next fall," Cynthia added. "They have an advanced curriculum that puts him on the right track early." The right track? As if there was only one. I bit my tongue, remembering how my own father had questioned my decisions as a young parent. I'd promised myself I wouldn't be that kind of grandfather. But something felt different. Not just the natural evolution of a family growing up, but a deliberate distancing. The visits became less frequent after that. Cynthia always had reasonable excuses: the kids' new activities, Peter's work schedule, renovation chaos. When we did see them, it felt increasingly formal, as if we were visiting acquaintances rather than family. Martha noticed it first. "They didn't ask us to Emma's school play," she said one evening, frowning at her tablet. Cynthia posted photos on Facebook. "They took Peter's parents." I shrugged it off. "Probably just a limited number of tickets. We'll catch the next one." But there was no next one, at least not for us. We learned about Thomas's preschool orientation through another Facebook post. Then Emma's piano recital. Then the family ski trip, where Peter's parents were prominently featured building snowmen with our grandchildren. Martha started finding reasons to call Cynthia, fishing for invitations that never came. "I thought maybe we could take the kids to that new children's museum this weekend," she'd suggest. Cynthia always had excuses ready. "They have make-up soccer practice. Emma has a play date with a classmate. We promised the kids we'd take them to the water park. Never, maybe next weekend. Or let's plan something soon." Just polite. Firm rejections. I found Martha crying in the laundry room one afternoon, clutching one of Emma's old sundresses she'd kept in a drawer. "What if they're embarrassed by us, Howard?" she whispered. "What if we're not sophisticated enough for their new life?" "That's ridiculous," I said, but the thought had crossed my mind too. Had my retirement from teaching diminished me in their eyes? Were Martha's homemade cookies suddenly inadequate compared to whatever their personal chef could create? When we did see the kids, they seemed different. Emma no longer asked for stories about the olden days or begged to help in the garden. Thomas didn't run to my workshop anymore. They had new references I didn't understand, activities I hadn't heard about, friends whose parents had job titles I couldn't pronounce. "Grandfather," Emma had started calling me, not Grandpa anymore. The formality stung like a paper cut, small but surprisingly painful. Then came the big announcement. Emma would be having her 8th birthday party at the country club. A proper affair with hired entertainment and catered food. Martha immediately offered to help with preparations. "Oh, that's sweet, Mom, but the event planner handles everything," Cynthia said. "We've got it covered, event planner. For an 8-year-old's birthday. Well, just tell us when and where and we'll be there with bells on," Martha replied, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. There was a pause on the line. "Actually, Mom, it's going to be a very structured event. Limited seating," another pause. "Peter's clients will be there with their children. It's sort of a networking opportunity too." Networking. "For 8-year-olds, of course," Martha said, her voice small. "We understand, but we didn't understand." Not really. How had our grandchildren become networking opportunities? When had our daughter started seeing us as accessories that didn't match her new decor? 2 days before the birthday party, Cynthia dropped by unexpectedly with the kids. She needed to run errands, she explained, and her regular sitter was unavailable. "Could we watch Emma and Thomas for a few hours?" "Of course," I said, perhaps too eagerly. "We've missed them. The children seemed subdued as they entered our home, looking around as if they'd forgotten what it looked like. Thomas clutched an electronic tablet instead of running to check if his toy tools were still in the garage. "We'll be on our best behavior," Emma promised solemnly, as if visiting grandparents required special conduct. "Nonsense," I laughed. "This is your second home. You can be however you want to be here." Martha brought out chocolate chip cookies, still warm from the oven. Thomas took one hesitantly, looking at his sister for permission. "Are these organic?" Emma asked, examining the cookie suspiciously. Martha's smile faltered. "They're my special recipe. The same ones you've always loved. Mum says refined sugar is basically poison," Emma informed us, with the confidence of someone reciting a newly learned fact. "And chocolate has caffeine." I fought back the urge to remind her how she used to beg for second helpings of these very same poison cookies. "Well, one cookie won't hurt," I said instead, winking at Thomas, who had already taken a bite, eyes widening with rediscovered pleasure. "We tried everything that afternoon. Board games, the treehouse, stories from my teaching days that used to make them giggle. The children participated, but tentatively, as if they were humoring elderly relatives they barely knew. Then, without thinking, I mentioned the upcoming birthday party. "Your mom tells us you're having quite the celebration at the country club. Bet you're excited." Emma's face lit up for the first time. "It's going to be amazing. We're having a chocolate fountain and a magician and pony rides." "Sounds wonderful," Martha said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We wish we could be there to see it." Emma tilted her head, confused. "But you can't come." "We know, sweetie," I said quickly. "Your mom explained about the limited seating." "No," Emma said with the devastating directness only children possess. "You're not invited to the birthday. Mom and Dad said it's an A-list party." The room went silent. Even Thomas looked up from his cookie. "A-list?" Martha repeated. "It means very important people," Emma explained patiently. "Dad says we have to be careful about our social connections now that we live in Willow Creek Estates." I felt something crack inside me. Not my heart exactly, but something adjacent to it. Some foundational belief about family and unconditional belonging. "I see," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening beneath my ribs. "And we're not A-list." "Grandma and Grandpa Hayes are coming," Thomas piped up. "They have a yacht, of course." "Peter's parents, the yacht owners." "Thomas," Emma hissed. "Mom said that was private family business." "Your family," I said automatically, but the words felt hollow now, contested. When Cynthia returned to collect the children, I watched her interaction with them carefully. Gone was the young mother who had once called us in tears because Emma had a fever. The woman who'd sought Martha's advice on everything from diaper rash to kindergarten readiness. In her place stood someone I barely recognized, someone who checked her watch impatiently while the children gathered their things, who seemed to survey our living room with a critical eye, noting its ordinariness. "Thanks for watching them," she said, already ushering the kids toward the door. The country club meeting ran longer than expected. "Cynthia," Martha began. "Emma mentioned something about the birthday party." "Oh, Mom, please don't start," Cynthia interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper, though the children were already outside. "You know how these social events are. Peter's business depends on certain impressions, and we'd give the wrong impression." I asked quietly. Cynthia had the grace to look uncomfortable. "It's not personal. It's just different worlds. As if we lived on separate planets instead of 20 minutes across town. We raised you in this world," I said, gesturing around our home. "It seemed good enough then." "Dad, don't be dramatic. It's just one birthday party." She glanced at her watch again. "I really need to get going. The interior decorator is coming to finalize the guest room design." After they left, Martha and I sat in silence for a long time. Remember when we thought the biggest problem would be them wanting to move in with us someday? Martha finally said, attempting a joke that fell flat in the heavy air between us. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emma's treehouse gathering dust, the workshop tools Thomas used to love, The photo albums documenting years of ordinary family moments that apparently weren't special enough anymore. Around 3 a.m., I made a decision. I nudged Martha awake. "Howard? What's wrong?" "We've been thinking about this all wrong," I said. "We've been waiting for invitations that aren't coming." "It's the middle of the night," she mumbled. But I could tell she was listening. What if, instead of hoping they'll let us into their world, we make our world something they can't ignore? Martha sat up, suddenly alert. "What are you thinking?" I told her my plan. By dawn, we were making lists. By noon, we were making phone calls. By dinner time, we were smiling again for the first time in months. The day before Emma's birthday party, a delivery truck pulled up to our house. 2 men unloaded large boxes and various equipment. Our neighbors watched curiously as they carried everything into our backyard. That evening, our phone rang. Cynthia's name flashed on the caller ID. "Emma just told me the strangest thing," she said without preamble. "She claims someone delivered a bouncy castle to your backyard." "Not just any bouncy castle," I replied calmly. "It's a 3-story princess castle with a slide and obstacle course." Silence. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Preparing for our own celebration," I explained. "Since we're not A-list enough for the country club, we thought we'd have a little party here instead. The day after Emma's official birthday. You can't just... We've also booked a magician. The same one who performed at the governor's mansion last year. And there's an ice cream truck coming. The kind that makes custom flavors on the spot." More silence. "Oh, and Martha's making her triple chocolate cake. The one Emma used to say was better than Christmas." "Dad," Cynthia's voice had changed, uncertainty replacing indignation. "This isn't appropriate. What isn't appropriate is telling your children their grandparents aren't important enough to attend a birthday celebration," I said, keeping my voice gentle despite the words. "What isn't appropriate is raising kids to believe that people with yachts matter more than people with history. It's more complicated than that. It really isn't, Cynthia." She sighed heavily. "I'll talk to Peter." "You do that," I said. "Our party starts at noon on Sunday. Everyone's welcome, or no one. Either way, Martha and I will be celebrating our granddaughter's birthday." After hanging up, I walked out to the backyard where the enormous bouncy castle stood illuminated against the evening sky. Martha was arranging lawn chairs nearby. "Did she sound angry?" Martha asked. "Confused," I replied, like someone who suddenly realized the rules had changed without her permission. "Do you think they'll come?" I shrugged. "That's up to them. But either way, we're done waiting for invitations." The next morning, a doorbell rang at 7:30 a.m. I opened it to find Emma and Thomas on our porch, still in their pajamas, with Cynthia standing behind them, looking simultaneously annoyed and defeated. "Is that really a princess bouncy castle?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. I stepped aside, gesturing toward the backyard. "See for yourself." The children bolted past me, their excited screams reaching us seconds later. Cynthia remained on the porch, arms crossed. "You've put me in an impossible position." "I learned from the best," I replied. She had the grace to look embarrassed. "Dad, you have to understand." "Peter's business." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "But you need to understand something too. Martha and I aren't just convenient babysitters or embarrassing relatives to be hidden away. We're your parents. We're their grandparents. That doesn't change because your zip code did." From the backyard, Emma shouted, "Mom, can we please come to Grandpa's party tomorrow? Please?" Cynthia looked past me to where the children were already climbing into the bouncy castle, their earlier restraint forgotten in the face of inflatable glory. "You locked the whole house, didn't you?" she said quietly. I nodded. "Every room, every memory, every tradition. But we left the key under the mat. It's always been there." Thomas appeared in the doorway, breathless with excitement. "Grandpa, will there really be an ice cream truck tomorrow? One that makes any flavor?" "Absolutely," I promised. "Even chocolate broccoli if that's what you want." "Ooh." He giggled, then ran back to join his sister. Cynthia watched him go, something shifting in her expression. "The country club party starts at 2, she finally said. "We could come here first, for a little while." It wasn't surrender, not exactly. But it was a step back toward the world we'd shared before. A world where birthday parties were about celebration. Not social climbing. We'll save you some cake, I said. Later that evening, after Cynthia had taken the reluctant children home to prepare for the official birthday party, Martha and I sat on our porch swing, watching the fireflies emerge. "Do you think they'll really come tomorrow?" Martha asked. "I think," I said slowly, "that we've reminded them of something important." "What's that?" I squeezed her hand. "That some invitations aren't printed on fancy cardstock or delivered by mail. Some are written in blood and history and sacrifice. The kind that can't be revoked by country clubs or social climbers." Martha rested her head against my shoulder. "When did we get old enough to have a granddaughter turning 8? Around the same time we got wise enough to fight for what matters," I answered. In the backyard, the Princess Castle stood silhouetted against the darkening sky, a monument to our quiet rebellion. Whether they came tomorrow or not, we had reclaimed something essential, our dignity, our place in the family story. And if that made us troublemakers at 70-something, well, so be it. Some battles were worth fighting, even with arthritic knees and reading glasses. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I tossed and turned, replaying Emma's words in my head. "You're not invited to the birthday. Mom and Dad said it's an A-list party." The casual cruelty of children often reveals uncomfortable truths adults try to hide. Around 3 a.m., I heard Martha crying softly beside me. I reached for her hand in the darkness. "I keep thinking about when Cynthia was little," she whispered. "Remember how she used to climb into our bed during thunderstorms?" "With that ratty stuffed rabbit," I added. "What was his name?" "Mr. Flopsy. We had to sew his ears back on at least a dozen times." We lay there holding hands, both wondering how our little girl with the patched-up rabbit had turned into a woman who ranked family members by social value. Morning brought a tentative sunshine and renewed determination. I dragged myself out of bed earlier than usual, my joints protesting after a restless night. While Martha slept, I went downstairs to make coffee and found myself staring at the refrigerator door. It was covered with children's artwork and photos, a collage of family history that seemed to mock our current situation. There was Emma, at age 4, gap-toothed and beaming, holding up a construction paper turkey with feathers made from her handprints. Thomas, at his 2nd birthday, face smeared with chocolate frosting. Cynthia as a teenager, rolling her eyes but smiling as I insisted on taking just one more photo before her first school dance. I touched a drawing Emma had made last Christmas. Grandpa's workshop, in wobbly crayon letters above stick figures labelled me and Grandpa, building what was supposedly a birdhouse but looked more like a lopsided purple rectangle. It had been just 9 months since she'd drawn it. How could things change so completely in such a short time? The doorbell rang at precisely noon. I opened it expecting to see a reluctant Cynthia with the children, but instead found only Emma and Thomas standing on our porch with Peter's mother, Victoria Hayes, behind them. "Grandpa!" Thomas launched himself at my legs while Emma entered more cautiously, her eyes immediately searching for the bouncy castle. Victoria Hayes stood rigidly in her designer pantsuit, pearls gleaming at her throat. She'd always reminded me of a department store mannequin, perfectly put together, but somehow not quite human. "Howard," she nodded stiffly, "Cynthia asked me to bring the children. She and Peter are making final preparations for the country club event." "Victoria?" I replied with equal formality. "Won't you come in?" "I'm afraid I can't stay. I'm needed at the venue." Her eyes darted past me, taking in our living room with what looked like barely concealed judgment. "I'll return for the children at 1:30. The official party begins at 2. "Actually," I said, "we planned activities until 4. That's what I told Cynthia." Victoria's mouth tightened. Cynthia specifically said 1:30. Before I could respond, Martha appeared behind me. "Victoria, Lovely to see you. The children just arrived and they've been looking forward to this all day. Surely you can spare them. Until 3 at least? The magician doesn't even arrive until 2. Victoria hesitated, clearly torn between Cynthia's instructions and the practical reality of 2 excited children who were already racing toward the backyard. Fine, she finally conceded. 3 o'clock, not a minute later. After she left, Martha and I exchanged glances. Did Cynthia really send her mother-in-law to drop off our grandchildren? Martha asked incredulously. Apparently, we've been demoted from grandparents to party hosts, I replied, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of bouncy castle jumping, ice cream eating, and magic show marveling. The children's initial restraint melted away quickly, replaced by the uninhibited joy I remembered. Emma laughed until she hiccuped when the magician pulled a rubber chicken from his hat. Thomas ate so much ice cream, his tongue turned 3 different colors. I was helping Thomas construct an ice cream sundae with possibly every topping available, when I noticed Emma sitting close to Martha on a lawn chair, their heads bent together in serious conversation. And then Avery said her daddy's company is bigger than Grandpa Hayes's company. And I said that's not true, because Daddy says Grandpa Hayes is the richest grandpa in the whole world, Emma was explaining earnestly. Is that important? Martha asked gently. Being the richest? Emma considered this. Daddy says it is. He says that's why we moved to the big house, so people will know we're important. I pretended to be absorbed in helping Thomas decide between sprinkles and chocolate chips. He ultimately chose both, but strained to hear Martha's response. And do you feel more important in the big house? Martha asked. Emma's face scrunched up thoughtfully. I don't know. My room is bigger, but I'm not allowed to put stickers on the walls anymore. And Mommy gets mad if I run inside or make noise when Daddy's business friends come over. Do you miss anything about your old house? Martha's voice was carefully casual. I miss Sparkles, Emma said immediately. Your cat? I thought Sparkles moved with you. Emma shook her head, her expression suddenly solemn. Daddy said Sparkles wouldn't match the new furniture, so he went to live on a farm. Martha's face froze for a split second before she recovered. I see. Mommy said he's very happy there, but I'm not allowed to visit because it's too far away. I felt something cold slide down my spine that had nothing to do with the ice cream. The lie was so transparent, so unnecessary. What kind of parents told a child her beloved pet was on a farm just because it didn't match their new decor? Before Martha could respond, the gate to our backyard swung open. I expected Victoria returning early, but instead saw Cynthia marching toward us, her face tight with controlled anger. Mom, Dad, a word please. She jerked her head toward the house. Martha and I exchanged glances before following her inside, leaving the children with the magician who was now making balloon animals. As soon as the kitchen door closed behind us, Cynthia rounded on us. What exactly do you think you're doing? Celebrating our granddaughter's birthday, I replied evenly, with a professional magician and an ice cream truck and that ridiculous bouncy castle. She gestured wildly toward the backyard. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? To whom? Martha asked quietly. Cynthia ignored the question. Emma's telling all her friends about Grandma and Grandpa's amazing party, the same friends who are supposed to be impressed by the country club event that cost us nearly $10,000 to arrange. I nearly choked. You spent $10,000 on an 8-year-old's birthday party. This isn't about the money, Cynthia snapped. It's about undermining our authority, our social position. Your social position, I repeated slowly. Is that what this is? About? Is that why we weren't invited to our own granddaughter's birthday? Cynthia at least had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Dad, you have to understand. Peter's business depends on certain connections. Victoria and Gerald's friends are all potential investors. The birthday party is as much a networking event as a celebration. And where do we fit in this new world order? Martha asked, her voice unnaturally calm. Are we simply not fancy enough for your country club life? Should we have bought a yacht instead of putting you through college debt-free? Cynthia flinched. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's not fair at all. A tense silence filled the kitchen. Through the window I could see Emma and Thomas laughing as the magician created elaborate balloon animals. Such a simple joy, untainted by social climbing or status anxiety. By the way, I said, breaking the silence, Emma told Martha about sparkles. Cynthia's expression shifted, defensiveness giving way to something like guilt. The cat that suddenly went to a farm because it didn't match your new furniture, I continued. That was quite a creative solution. It wasn't like that, Cynthia protested weakly. What was it like then? Martha's voice had turned icy. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and Peter are systematically erasing anything that doesn't fit your new image, including a child's pet, including us. Cynthia stared at the floor. The neighborhood has strict rules about pets, and Sparkles was old anyway. So you had him put down? I asked, stunned. Her silence was answer enough. My God, Cynthia, Martha whispered. Who are you becoming? The back door burst open before Cynthia could respond. Emma stood there, breathless with excitement. Mom, you're here! Did you see the magician? He can make doves appear out of nowhere, and Grandma says I can take home all the leftover balloons. Cynthia's face transformed instantly, professional smile sliding into place. That's wonderful, sweetie, but remember, we need to leave soon for your real party. Emma's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Can't we stay longer? Thomas is still in the bouncy castle. Your real party, I repeated quietly. As opposed to this fake. One with your fake grandparents? Dad, don't, Cynthia warned under her breath. Emma looked confused. What's fake? Nothing, sweetheart, Martha said quickly. Your mom just means the bigger party at the country club with all your friends. Emma shrugged. I like this party better. Can't my friends come here instead? The look on Cynthia's face would have been comical under different circumstances. Pure horror at the suggestion that the careful, orchestrated country club event might be abandoned for our backyard celebration. No, Emma, that's not possible, she said firmly. Everyone is already waiting for us at the club. Now go find Thomas. We need to leave in 10 minutes. After Emma reluctantly went back outside, Cynthia turned to us. I hope you're satisfied. You've completely confused her about what's important, have we? I asked. Or have we reminded her what's real? Cynthia checked her watch pointedly. We don't have time for philosophy. Dad, I need to get the kids changed and over to the club. Heaven forbid they show up with ice cream stains on their designer outfits, Martha murmured. Cynthia ignored this. Mother Hayes will collect them shortly. Please have them ready to go, Mother Hayes, I repeated. Not Victoria? Not even Mrs. Hayes? You're calling her Mother Hayes now? A flush crept up Cynthia's neck. It's what Peter calls her. And what do the children call her? Martha asked. Grandmother Hayes, of course. Of course, I echoed. Because Grandma is too common for the yacht owners. Cynthia's phone chimed. She glanced at it, then back at us with renewed urgency. I have to go. The event planner is having a crisis with the cake delivery. As she hurried toward the door, I called after her, Cynthia, when did all this become so important to you? The status, the appearances? When did we raise you to value connections over family? She paused, hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I thought I glimpsed something like shame in her expression. You didn't, she admitted quietly, but you also raised me to succeed. And in Peter's world, this is what success looks like. After she left, Martha and I stood silently in our kitchen, the sounds of children's laughter filtering in from outside. We're losing her, Martha finally said, and I don't know how to bring her back. Maybe we already have lost her, I replied, surprising myself with the words. Maybe the daughter we raised disappeared the moment she decided her parents weren't good enough for her new life. Victoria Hayes arrived precisely at 3 o'clock. A different designer pantsuit, but the same rigid posture. The children protested leaving, but their complaints fell on deaf ears. "Your mother is waiting," Victoria informed them crisply. "Everyone is already at the club. The pony rides begin in 20 minutes. As they gathered their party favors and balloon animals, I pulled Emma aside. "Did you have fun today, sweetheart?" She nodded enthusiastically. "This was the best birthday ever. Can we do it again tomorrow?" I smiled sadly. "Not tomorrow, but soon." Victoria cleared her throat impatiently from the doorway. "We're running late, Emma." Emma gave me a quick hug before joining her brother by the door. As they were leaving, I heard Victoria ask, "What on earth is that sticky substance on your dress? And Thomas, your hands are blue. We'll have to stop at home to change before the party." Martha and I spent the next hour cleaning up in silence, deflating balloons, storing leftover cake, watching the rental company dismantle the bouncy castle. Our house, so full of laughter just moments before, felt hollow now. "We should get ready," Martha said eventually, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "For what?" "The country club party. We should at least make an appearance." I stared at her. "We weren't invited, remember? We're not A-list. Howard, don't be stubborn. This is about Emma, not about our pride, is it? Or is it about Cynthia wanting to pretend she has the perfect family for her perfect new friends?" Martha sighed. "Either way, those are our grandchildren. We should be there." I knew she was right, but something inside me resisted the thought of standing awkwardly at that party, watching Cynthia introduce the Hayes grandparents to her important friends, while we hovered on the periphery like unwanted relatives. Made my stomach turn. Nevertheless, I found myself changing into my good suit 30 minutes later, adjusting my tie in the mirror while Martha put on her favorite blue dress. "We'll just stay for an hour," she promised, applying lipstick carefully. "Long enough to sing Happy Birthday and give Emma her present." The Willow Creek Country Club stood on manicured grounds overlooking the lake, its stone facade and columned entrance designed to intimidate those who didn't belong. We parked between a Mercedes and a BMW, our 15-year-old Buick looking decidedly out of place. At the reception desk, a young woman in a crisp uniform checked her tablet. "Name, please." "Howard and Martha Jennings," I said. "We're Emma's grandparents." She scrolled through her screen, frowning slightly. "I'm sorry. I don't see your names on the guest list." "There must be a mistake," Martha said. "We're the birthday girl's grandparents." The receptionist looked uncomfortable. "Let me check with the event coordinator." As she stepped away, I exchanged glances with Martha. "Not a mistake," I murmured. "They wouldn't actually—" Martha's voice trailed off as the receptionist returned with a woman in a headset. "I'm Melissa." "The event coordinator," she said briskly. "There seems to be some confusion. The Hayes birthday celebration is a private event with a strict guest list, and I'm afraid your names aren't on it." "We're Emma's grandparents," Martha repeated, her voice strained. "Her mother's parents." Melissa's professional smile didn't waver. "I understand, but I can only admit guests who are pre-approved by the hosts. Perhaps there was a miscommunication." "Oh, there's been a communication, all right," I said, anger rising in my chest. "Very clear communication about who matters in Emma's life and who doesn't." "Howard," Martha warned quietly, "would you like me to check with Mrs. Cynthia Hayes?" Melissa offered, clearly hoping to diffuse the situation. "No," I said firmly. "Don't bother. We already know what she'll say." As we turned to leave, I caught sight of Cynthia through the open doors of the ballroom. She was laughing with a group of well-dressed couples, champagne glass in hand, while Peter stood nearby, deep in conversation with older men in expensive suits. Of Emma and Thomas there was no sign. "Howard," Martha grabbed my arm, following my gaze. "Don't make a scene." "Not here," I shook my head. "I wouldn't give them the satisfaction." We drove home in silence, the gift-wrap package for Emma sitting untouched on the back seat. Once home, I changed out of my suit and into comfortable clothes, then sat heavily in my recliner, suddenly exhausted. "I keep thinking about what we did wrong," Martha said softly, perching on the arm of my chair. Where did we fail her, Howard? We didn't fail her, I replied. She failed herself. And us. Martha's phone chimed with a text message. She glanced at it, then handed it to me wordlessly. It was from Cynthia. Heard you tried to crash the party. Mortifying. Will call tomorrow to discuss boundaries. I felt something snap inside me, not anger exactly, but a final severing of hope. Boundaries, I repeated, handing the phone back. That's rich, coming from someone who doesn't respect our most basic dignity. Martha set the phone down without replying. What do we do now? I stared out the window at our quiet street, thinking of Emma's treehouse sitting empty, of Thomas's little workbench gathering dust in my garage, of all the birthdays and holidays and ordinary days we might miss because we weren't deemed valuable enough to include. I don't know, I admitted, but I know what we're not going to do. We're not going to beg for scraps of attention from our own daughter. We're not going to pretend this treatment is acceptable. Martha leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. They'll realize eventually, won't they, that they're making a terrible mistake? I wanted to reassure her, to say of course they would, that Cynthia would come to her senses and remember who she really was, who we really were to her. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, I think we need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that this is the new normal. The phone rang, startling us both. Martha reached for it, checking the caller ID. It's Peter, she said. Surprised, I nodded for her to answer, putting it on speakerphone. Hello? Peter? Martha said cautiously. Martha. His voice was clipped, formal. I'm calling about your behavior today. Our behavior? I couldn't help interrupting. We weren't even allowed into the party. That's precisely the issue, Howard. Peter's tone was the same one he probably used with junior employees who'd made costly mistakes. You created an extremely awkward situation for the staff. Several of our guests witnessed the confrontation. Confrontation, Martha repeated incredulously. We simply asked to attend our granddaughter's birthday party. After being explicitly informed it was an exclusive event, Peter countered. Look, I understand you're having difficulty adjusting to changes in Cynthia's social position, but you need to respect our decisions about appropriate guest lists for our functions. Social position, I echoed, my voice dangerously quiet. Is that what you call shutting out family? Building your precious connections while teaching your children that grandparents are disposable if they don't bring enough status to the table? There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Peter spoke again, his voice had hardened. I think this conversation is becoming unproductive. Cynthia and I have decided it might be best if we take a short break from family gatherings while everyone adjusts to appropriate boundaries. What exactly does that mean, Peter? Martha asked, her hand gripping mine tightly. It means we'll be limiting visits for the time being, until certain attitudes improve. You're cutting us off from our grandchildren because we embarrassed you in front of your rich friends. I stated flatly, I'm ending this call before things are said that can't be taken back, Peter replied coldly. We'll be in touch when you're ready to approach this situation more reasonably. The line went dead. Martha stared at the phone in her hand, as if it had suddenly turned into something venomous. Did they just? Yes, I said quietly. They did. We sat in stunned silence as darkness fell outside our windows. In one afternoon, we'd gone from grandparents to outsiders, from family to inconveniences. They can't do this, Martha finally whispered. They can't keep the children from us, but we both knew they could, and would. I thought about Emma's delight in the bouncy castle, Thomas's chocolate-smeared grin as he ate ice cream, the casual way Cynthia had replaced sparkles when he didn't match the new decor, the calculated exclusion from a birthday party, the text message about boundaries, Peter's cold voice informing us we were essentially on time out until we learned to behave appropriately. I think, I said slowly, we need to decide how far we're willing to go. Martha looked at me questioningly. If they're playing hardball, maybe we should too. What do you mean? I reached for her hand. I mean, maybe it's time to remind our daughter and her husband that we're not just embarrassing old people, they can shove in a corner. Maybe it's time to show them exactly what they're throwing away. I didn't elaborate further that night. But as we went to bed, both too shaken to eat dinner, a plan was already forming in my mind. If Cynthia wanted boundaries, I'd give her boundaries. If Peter wanted to discuss property and ownership, we could certainly have that conversation. They'd declared war on their family legacy. And I was just stubborn enough to fight back. I didn't sleep at all that night. While Martha drifted in and out of restless slumber beside me, I stared at the ceiling, Peter's words echoing in my head. Limiting visits for the time being, until certain attitudes improve, the pompous condescending tone, the casual cruelty of it, as if our grandchildren were privileges they could revoke whenever we didn't behave, according to their social playbook. Around 4 a.m., I slipped out of bed and went downstairs to my study. Pulling open the bottom drawer of my desk, I retrieved a worn manila folder labeled House Documents. Inside were the deed, mortgage papers, insurance policies, and other official records for our home. I spread them across my desk and studied them in the dim light of my desk lamp. This house, our house, the one we'd scrimped and saved to buy when Cynthia was just 3 years old. The house where she'd taken her first steps, lost her first tooth, gotten ready for her prom. The mortgage had been paid off 7 years ago. We'd thrown a small party to celebrate, burning the final statement in the fireplace with a sense of accomplishment that felt almost holy. Debt-free at last, our little piece of the American dream fully realized. What Cynthia and Peter didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask about, was what else that folder contained. Behind the standard documents lay another set of papers that I'd filed away years ago, thinking I'd never need them. A second mortgage we'd taken out when Cynthia was in college. Not for a vacation home or a boat or any of the luxuries we'd always postponed. No, this had been for her. For the emergency fund we'd established to cover her tuition when her scholarship fell through in her junior year. For the apartment security deposit when she moved to the city. For the car we'd bought her when her old one died right before her first corporate job interview. All those gifts had come from somewhere. And that somewhere was this house, our retirement security, our nest egg, our future. The documents showed we'd borrowed against our home to the tune of $120,000. We'd paid it back, of course postponing our own retirement by 5 years to do so. Martha had kept working at the library despite her arthritis. I'd taken on extra summer teaching and weekend tutoring gigs. We'd never complained, never mentioned the sacrifice, because that's what parents do, isn't it? They sacrifice without expecting gratitude or even acknowledgement. They give without strings attached. But now, looking at the evidence of our quiet sacrifice spread before me in black and white, I felt something shift inside me. There's a difference between giving freely and being taken for granted. Between sacrifice and exploitation. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I carefully replaced the documents and went to the kitchen to start coffee. As the familiar aroma filled the kitchen, I heard Martha's footsteps on the stairs. "You're up early," she said, tightening her robe against the morning chill. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted, pouring her a cup of coffee just the way she liked it. 1 sugar, splash of milk. She accepted it gratefully. "What are we going to do, Howard?" I took a deep breath. "I think we need to remind our daughter where she came from, and who helped her get to where she is." Martha's eyes narrowed slightly. "What exactly are you planning?" I explained my idea. As I spoke, her expression shifted from concern to thoughtful consideration to cautious approval. "Do you think it will work?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I know we can't continue like this, being treated like embarrassing relatives they have to manage." She nodded slowly. "You're right. We raised her better than this." After breakfast, I placed 2 calls. The first was to our longtime family lawyer, James Burkhart. The second was to our neighbor, Ted Wilson, who happened to be a locksmith. By noon, both men had visited our house, provided their services, and left with the job complete. All that remained was to wait. We didn't have to wait long. At 3:17 p.m. my phone rang. Cynthia's name flashed on the screen. "Hello?" I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Dad, her tone was clipped professional. I just got a very strange call from James Burkhart. Something about property documents that need my signature immediately. Yes, that's right. What's this about? I'm in the middle of preparing for a client dinner. I took a deep breath. It's about the house. What house? This house. Our house. The one you grew up in. I could hear her impatience through the phone. What about it? Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong. I've just decided to make some changes to our will and estate planning. James needs your signature on some documents relating to the property. There was a pause. Can't this wait until next week? I told you we're taking some space right now. Actually, it can't wait. The documents need to be filed by the end of the business day tomorrow. Another pause, longer this time. Fine, email them and I'll sign electronically. That won't work, I said calmly. These require in-person signatures and notarization. James explained that to you, I assume? I heard her exhale sharply. Dad, I don't have time for this. I'm swamped at work and we have the dinner tonight, and Emma has a science project due. The appointment is set for 7 p.m. tonight at our house, I interrupted gently. It shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. Tonight? That's impossible. We have the dinner. Cynthia, I said, my voice firm but quiet. This is important. It's about your inheritance. That word, inheritance, created the exact pause I'd anticipated. My inheritance. Yes, please be here at 7. Bring Peter if you'd like. Before she could protest further, I added, oh, and don't bring the children. This is adult business. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding in my chest. The trap was set. Now I just had to hope she'd take the bait. At 7:03 p.m., a black SUV pulled into our driveway. Cynthia emerged from the passenger side, Peter from the driver's seat. Both were dressed in business attire, clearly coming directly from work. Their faces wore matching expressions of irritation barely concealed behind professional smiles. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. Right on time, I said pleasantly. Come in. They followed me into the living room where Martha sat in her armchair, hands folded calmly in her lap. No lawyer waited with documents. No papers were spread on the coffee table. Cynthia looked around, confused. Where's James? James isn't coming, I said, gesturing for them to sit. There are no documents to sign. Peter's expression darkened. What is this? This, I said, remaining standing, is a conversation that's long overdue. Cynthia crossed her arms. Dad, if this is about the birthday party, it's about much more than that, Martha interrupted softly. It's about respect and memory and gratitude. Peter glanced at his watch pointedly. We have a client dinner in 40 minutes. Then I'll be brief, I said. This house, the one you're sitting in right now, this is the house where we raised you, Cynthia. This is the house we nearly lost paying for your college when your scholarship fell through. Her eyes widened slightly. What are you talking about? I crossed to my desk and retrieved the folder I'd examined that morning. These are the second mortgage papers we took out in 2003. $120,000 against our home to ensure you could finish your degree without debt. I placed the documents on the coffee table. Peter glanced at them but didn't touch them. That was 20 years ago, Cynthia said dismissively. What does this have to do with we paid that loan off by working extra jobs for 5 years, Martha continued. Your father tutored on weekends. I shelved books despite my arthritis. We postponed our retirement to make sure you started your adult life on solid footing. And we never complained, I added. Never mentioned it. Never held it over your head, because that's what parents do. Cynthia shifted uncomfortably. I appreciate what you did for me, but I don't see you keep using the phrase social position, I interrupted. As if your new status just materialized out of thin air. But everything you have, your education, your first apartment, your first car, the confidence to pursue that corporate job, all of it was built on sacrifices we made gladly. And now, Martha said, her voice gentle but firm, you treat us like embarrassing relatives. Like we're not good enough for your country club friends. Like we're disposable. Peter cleared his throat. I think you're being dramatic. Nobody said you're disposable. No. I raised an eyebrow. Limiting visits until attitudes improve? excluding us from our own granddaughter's birthday, having your mother deliver our grandchildren instead of facing us yourselves. What would you call it? An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Cynthia glanced at Peter, then back at us. We've been busy, she said weakly. The new house, Peter's promotion, the kids' activities, too busy for family, Martha asked. Too busy for the people who moved heaven and earth to give you every advantage. Cynthia's face flushed. That's not fair. Neither is teaching your children that their grandparents aren't important enough to include in celebrations, I countered. Peter stood abruptly. I think we should go. This conversation isn't productive. Sit down, I said, with the same tone I'd used on unruly students for 35 years. To my mild surprise, he did. There's been a change to our house, I continued. You should know about it, Cynthia frowned. What change? We've changed the locks. All of them. And we've installed a security system, Peter blinked. Why would you do that? Because, I said evenly, this house is no longer your safety net. This house is no longer your inheritance. This house is no longer your fallback plan. Cynthia's mouth fell open. What are you talking about? We met with our lawyer this morning, Martha explained. We've removed you from our will, Cynthia. This house, and everything in it, will go to a trust for Emma and Thomas when we're gone. A trust they can only access after they turn 30. You can't do that, Peter said automatically. Actually, we can, I replied. It's our house. Our money. A decision. Cynthia stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. Is this? Are you punishing me for the birthday party? No, sweetheart, Martha said softly. We're protecting ourselves from being treated as accessories to your new life instead of as the foundation of it. I sat down finally, suddenly feeling every one of my 72 years. You've made it clear that we don't fit into your vision of success. That's your choice to make. But choices have consequences. So this is... What, blackmail? Peter asked, his banker's mind immediately calculating the financial implications. You'll put us back in the will if we let you come to parties? This isn't negotiable, I said firmly. The decision is made. The papers are filed. We're simply informing you as a courtesy. Cynthia's eyes filled with tears, whether from hurt or anger I couldn't tell. I don't understand. Why would you do this to me, to us? We didn't do this to you, Martha corrected gently. We did this for Emma and Thomas, and for ourselves. I leaned forward, looking my daughter directly in the eyes. You've forgotten something important, Cynthia. Something your mother and I tried to teach you by example. Success isn't measured by the size of your house or the exclusivity of your social circle. It's measured by the strength of your character, by how you treat the people who loved you before you had anything to offer them in return. She stared back at me, tears now spilling down her cheeks. You think I'm a terrible person, don't you? No, I said honestly. I think you're a person who's forgotten who she is, who's lost her way, trying to become someone else entirely. Peter checked his watch again, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional turn of the conversation. We need to go. We're already late. Cynthia wiped her eyes hurriedly. Yes, we should go. They both stood. I made no move to walk them to the door. Think about what really matters, Martha said as they turned to leave. Not what impresses people who barely know you, but what builds a legacy your children will be proud of. After they left, Martha and I sat in silence for several long minutes. Do you think we got through to them? She finally asked. I don't know, I admitted. But we've done what we can. 3 days passed without a word from Cynthia or Peter. No calls, no texts, no emails. The silence felt both expected and disappointing. On the 4th day, just as we were finishing breakfast, our doorbell rang. I opened it to find Emma and Thomas standing on the porch alone. Grandpa! Thomas launched himself at me with his usual enthusiasm. Emma hung back slightly, looking uncertain. Are you still mad at us? I crouched down to her level, ignoring the protest in my knees. We were never mad at you, sweetheart, never. But Mom said you and Grandma were having a grown-up disagreement. That's true, I nodded. But it has nothing to do with you or Thomas. We love you both no matter what, Martha appeared behind me. Emma, Thomas! What a wonderful surprise. As the children moved past me into the house, I noticed Cynthia standing by her car in the driveway watching us. After a moment's hesitation, I walked down to meet her. The kids missed you, she said simply. We missed them too. She looked down, kicking absently at a pebble on the driveway. I've been thinking about what you said, and she took a deep breath. You're right. About a lot of things. Not everything, but a lot. I waited, giving her space to continue. I got caught up in it all, she admitted. The house, the neighborhood, Peter's business connections. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that stuff mattered more than the real stuff. The real stuff? Family, history, where I came from. She looked up at our modest 2-story home. Who helped me get where I am? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I never knew about the second mortgage, she continued. Why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't need to know. It wasn't your burden to carry, but it was your sacrifice to make, she countered. And I never even thanked you, I shrugged. That's parenthood. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, Did you really change your will? Yes. Good. Her answer surprised me. I don't want the house, Dad. I don't deserve it. It's not about deserving. Yes, it is, she interrupted. It is about deserving, and about remembering, and about teaching my kids what really matters. From inside the house came the sound of children's laughter, Emma and Thomas, discovering whatever treats Martha had inevitably produced from the kitchen. I told Peter we need to re-evaluate our priorities, Cynthia said quietly. He didn't like it at first, but then I showed him some old photo albums, the ones from when I was growing up, pictures of family vacations in that old station wagon, Christmases where the biggest gift was a bicycle, not a gaming system. And I told him about that summer we all camped in the backyard because we couldn't afford a real vacation. I smiled at the memory. Your mother made s'mores in the microwave, and we told ghost stories with flashlights. It was one of the best vacations of my life, Cynthia said. And I've been to the Maldives since then. She looked back toward the house, where Emma's face was now pressed against the living room window, watching us. I want them to have what I had, she said softly. Not just the fancy stuff, the real stuff. Does that include grandparents? I asked, only half joking. She met my eyes directly. It especially includes grandparents. The kind who build tree houses and have workshops and make cookies that might not be organic but taste like childhood. I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen slightly. What about your social connections? Your A-list status? Cynthia winced. God, I can't believe I let Emma repeat that garbage. That's not who I want to be, Dad. And it's definitely not who I want her to become. She hesitated, then added, We're hosting a neighborhood barbecue next Saturday. Nothing fancy, just burgers and hot dogs. Would you and Mom like to come? You could stay overnight if you want. The guest room is finally finished. I recognized the olive branch for what it was, not just an invitation, but a step back toward the daughter we'd raised. We'd like that, I said, though I can't promise your mother won't bring her famous potato salad. Cynthia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I'm counting on it. As she turned to go, I called after her. How long are the kids staying today? Until dinner, she replied. Unless you'd like them to stay overnight. They've been asking to sleep in their old rooms here, old rooms we'd never changed, never redecorated, keeping them frozen in time like museums to childhood. We'd love that, I said, not bothering to hide my emotion. She nodded. I'll drop off their overnight bags later. And Dad, thank you for not giving up on me. As I watched her drive away, I felt Martha come up beside me, slipping her arm through mine. Well, she asked. Progress, I replied. Real progress. We spent the day rediscovering our grandchildren, playing board games, working in the garden, making cookies with too much sugar and not enough nutritional value. Emma disappeared into her treehouse for nearly an hour, emerging with a stack of drawings. Thomas insisted on helping me change a light bulb in the kitchen, his little face serious with concentration as he handed me tools. After dinner, as the children got ready for bed, I found myself sitting on the back porch steps looking up at the stars. Martha joined me, wrapping a light jacket around her shoulders against the evening chill. Penny for your thoughts, she said. Just thinking about fences, I replied. Fences? Robert Frost. Good fences make good neighbors, she smiled. I don't think that poem means what most people think it means. Exactly, I nodded. Sometimes the fences we build to protect ourselves end up isolating us instead. Sometimes what looks like strength is actually fear. Are we talking about Cynthia or about us? Martha asked perceptively. I considered the question. Both, maybe. We were all building walls instead of bridges. From upstairs came the sound of Emma calling for a bedtime story. Some traditions never change, no matter how old the children get or how complicated the adult relationships become. You know, Martha said, rising to her feet, we didn't do too badly with her. She found her way back. She's still finding it, I corrected. But she's heading in the right direction. Later that night, with both children asleep in their old rooms, I sat at my desk and wrote 2 letters, one for Emma and one for Thomas. Letters they wouldn't read until they were much older, perhaps not until after Martha and I were gone. Letters about what really matters in life, about the difference between success and significance, about the inheritance that can't be quantified in dollars or square footage or social connections. The true inheritance we leave behind isn't property or bank accounts. It's the values we instill, the memories we create, the examples we set when faced with difficult choices. Sometimes it takes locking the doors, literally and figuratively, to remind the people we love what home really means. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's worst instincts. And sometimes the most important lesson we can teach our children and grandchildren is that character still counts. Even in a world obsessed with status and appearance, Emma and Thomas will inherit this house someday, long after Martha and I are gone. But what matters more is what they inherit today, tomorrow, and every day we have left together. The invisible legacy of love, integrity, and unshakable family bonds that survive even the rockiest seasons. If there's one thing I've learned in 72 years on this earth, it's this. The most valuable things we own can't be bought, sold, or stolen. They can only be given freely and received gratefully. And sometimes protecting those treasures requires standing your ground, even against the people you love most. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more family tales with hard-earned wisdom. And let me know in the comments how you'd rate this story from 0 to 10. Your feedback helps this old teacher know if he's still connecting with his audience.